Hello and welcome to the Expensive Coins History Channel. Picture this for a moment. You're standing in a quiet room, maybe at your kitchen table, a cup of coffee nearby, and in your hand is a small, unassuming coin. It's heavy for its size, solid, familiar. You've probably held one like it hundreds of times without a second thought. Yet this particular piece of metal carries a story far bigger than its face value. A story woven through history, chance, human error, and the strange way ordinary objects can become extraordinary. The 1994 Australian $2 coin did not enter the world with fanfare. It wasn't announced as special. There were no trumpets, no headlines, no grand declarations. It arrived quietly, like so many coins before it, slipping into wallets, cash registers, and pockets across the country. Most people treated it exactly as intended, a tool for everyday life. A coin for parking meters, newspaper purchases, bus fares, and loose change at the end of the day. But history has a habit of hiding its most fascinating twists in plain sight. To understand why this coin matters, you have to go back to what the $2 coin represents in Australia. Introduced in the late 1980s, it was designed to replace the $2 note, offering durability and practicality. By 1994, the coin was already a familiar part of daily commerce. Its design was well known, its weight and color instantly recognizable. There was nothing about that year on the surface that screamed remarkable. And yet, something subtle happened. Coins are born from systems that depend on precision. Metal composition, dies, presses, quality control. Every step is designed to produce consistency. But those systems are run by humans, and humans, no matter how skilled, are imperfect. Occasionally, something slips through. Tiny variation, a detail that doesn't quite match the standard. At the time, it means nothing. Years later, it can mean everything. The 1994 $2 coin sits at a crossroads of routine production and unexpected rarity. While millions were minted, not all coins are created equal in the eyes of collectors. What separates the ordinary from the extraordinary is not always obvious at first glance. It can be a minute difference in strike quality, a variation in metal tone, or a feature that was never meant to exist at all. What makes this coin especially compelling is how long it remained overlooked. For years, these coins circulated freely. They were spent, saved, lost, and rediscovered without anyone suspecting that some examples held the seeds of immense value. They passed through countless hands: workers, retirees, shopkeepers, students, none of whom had any reason to believe they were touching something special. This is where the emotional weight of the story begins to build. Because hidden within the tale of the 1994 $2 coin is the idea that history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits patiently for decades, allowing time to separate the rare from the common, the meaningful from the mundane. Collectors, especially those with decades of experience, often speak of a moment of realization. That instant when a coin they've seen countless times suddenly looks different. Heavier, sharper, more significant. For some, that moment came with the 1994 issue. A closer look, a comparison, a question that refused to go away. Why does this one feel different? As interest slowly grew, so did scrutiny. Coins from that year were examined under magnification, weighed, measured, and compared. Patterns began to emerge. Certain examples stood apart. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough to make seasoned eyes pause. And in the world of numismatics, a pause is often the first step toward discovery. What followed was not a rush, but a gradual awakening. Conversations between collectors, quiet assessments, a growing awareness that something from 1994 deserved more attention than it had ever received. This wasn't hype. This wasn't speculation driven by internet rumors. It was the slow, methodical process of people who had spent lifetimes studying coins, recognizing that they were looking at something genuinely different. And here's what makes this story resonate so deeply, especially for those who have lived long enough to see trends come and go. The 1994 Australian $2 coin is a reminder that value is not always immediate. In fact, the most powerful value often takes time to reveal itself. Decades, even. It challenges the idea that everything important is recognized right away. Instead, it suggests that patience, perspective, and experience are what uncover true significance. Think about how many of these coins were dismissed, tossed into jars, dropped into couches, lost in drawers. How many opportunities slipped past unnoticed? And then think about how many might still be out there, waiting quietly, unchanged, while the world around them moves on. There's also something deeply human about this coin's journey. It reflects our tendency to overlook what feels familiar. We assume that rarity must look rare, that value must announce itself loudly. But sometimes, the most remarkable things were the disguise of normality. As collectors began to understand the full context of the 1994 issue, the conversation shifted. This was no longer just about a coin. It became about timing, chance, and the thin line between the everyday and the exceptional. It became about stories, who found one, where it was discovered, how long it had been sitting unnoticed. For viewers who remember 1994 vividly, this coin becomes a kind of time capsule. It connects to a specific era, a set of memories, a stage of life. It reminds us that while we were busy living, history was quietly forming in our pockets. And this is where the narrative truly deepens, because the 1994 $2 coin is not just about metal and minting. It's about perspective, about how age and experience teach us to look closer, to question assumptions, to recognize that worth is not always visible at first glance. Everything changes. The quiet recognition turns into something far more intense. The stakes rise, the numbers become almost unbelievable, and the full weight of what this coin represents, financially, historically, and emotionally, finally comes into focus. As awareness grew, the story of the 1994 Australian $2 coin moved from quiet curiosity into something far more intense. What had once been casual conversations between collectors began to carry urgency. People started checking old jars of change, inherited collections, forgotten drawers. Not out of greed, but out of disbelief. The idea that something so ordinary could carry extraordinary significance challenged everything people thought they knew about money and value. Seasoned collectors will tell you that the most dangerous assumption in numismatics is believing you've already seen everything. The 1994 coin shattered that illusion. It reminded experts and everyday people alike that discovery doesn't always come from distant centuries or ancient empires. Sometimes it comes from your own lifetime, from an object you've handled without thought. What made the tension rise even further was how narrow the window of rarity became. While millions of $2 coins existed, only a microscopic fraction met the precise conditions that separated the exceptional from the ordinary. This wasn't a case of every coin from that year is valuable. Quite the opposite. It was about pinpoint accuracy, subtle characteristics, and an understanding that took years to fully mature. This is where emotion enters the story in a powerful way. Imagine realizing that a coin you once spent without hesitation could now change a life. Imagine knowing that one decision, one glance, one moment of awareness might have altered everything. That sense of near miss, of standing inches from something monumental without knowing it, resonates deeply, especially with those who have lived long enough to reflect on the turning points of their own lives. The 1994 $2 coin became a symbol of that idea. Not regret, but reflection. It represents the countless moments we don't recognize as important until time gives us perspective. It teaches that significance is often assigned later, shaped by context, rarity, and the stories we attach to objects. As interest intensified, so did the seriousness. Authentication became critical. No longer was it enough to say, "I have a 1994 coin." The question became, which one? Condition, provenance, and minute details suddenly mattered more than ever. Coins were examined under professional scrutiny, not with excitement alone, but with discipline and respect for the process. This phase separated fantasy from reality. Many hoped, few qualified, and that only made the confirmed examples more powerful. Each verified coin carried not just monetary weight, but narrative weight. Where had it been all these years? Who held it? How did it survive untouched while so many others disappeared or degraded? The answers, often unknown, only added to the mystique. For viewers aged 35 to 65 and beyond, this story hits differently. It's not just about money. It's about time, about how the past quietly shapes the present, about how something created decades ago can suddenly step forward and demand attention in a world that rarely looks back. There's also a deeper lesson embedded in this coin's journey. It challenges the idea that value must be flashy or immediate. In a culture obsessed with speed and instant results, the 1994 $2 coin is a slow burn. Its significance unfolded gradually, patiently, waiting for the right eyes and the right moment. And when that moment arrived, it arrived with force. The realization of its true worth didn't explode overnight. Instead, it built steadily, fueled by evidence, verification, and growing consensus among experts who understood exactly what they were looking at. This wasn't speculation driven by excitement alone. It was grounded recognition, earned through study and restraint. That's what gives the story credibility. And now we reach the point where everything converges. The history, the rarity, the patience, the human element. All of it leads to a number so staggering that it feels unreal when spoken aloud. Because under the rarest and most extraordinary circumstances, the true value attributed to the most exceptional example of the 1994 Australian $2 coin has reached an astonishing figure. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, not even $1.4 million. Let that settle. $0.4 million for a coin that once bought a loaf of bread. $4 million for something that spent years unnoticed, uncelebrated, and ignored. $4 million for proof that the extraordinary can hide in the most ordinary places. And that is why this coin is more than metal. It is a reminder, a warning, an invitation. Look closer, question assumptions, respect the quiet power of time. Because somewhere, maybe even now, history is sitting unnoticed, waiting for someone to recognize its true worth. Because the real power of the 1994 Australian $2 coin is not locked in vaults or auction rooms. It lives in the realization that history does not belong only to museums or textbooks. It belongs to everyday people. It belongs to moments we overlook. It belongs to objects we underestimate. This coin forces a pause. It asks us to reconsider how many times we've dismissed something simply because it felt familiar. How often we've assumed that significance must come from far away, from long ago, or from something obviously rare. Yet here is proof that something created within our own lifetime, something we may have held in our hands, can quietly rise to extraordinary importance. For many, this realization sparks something deeper than excitement. It awakens curiosity, a desire to look again at what we already have. Old collections, family keepsakes, forgotten drawers, not with desperation, but with respect, with awareness. The 1994 $2 coin also speaks to a generation that understands patience. Those who have watched markets rise and fall, trends appear and vanish, fortunes made and lost. This coin did not chase attention. It waited. Its value matured slowly, shaped by time, rarity, and recognition rather than hype. And that patience is part of why its story resonates so strongly. There is dignity in an object that earns its worth rather than demands it. There is power in knowing that something ordinary can become extraordinary without changing at all. The coin never transformed. The world's understanding of it did. That is the quiet brilliance of this story. $0.4 million is a staggering number. Yes, but the true impact lies beyond the figure. It lies in what that number represents. The triumph of awareness over assumption, of curiosity over neglect, of time over haste. So the next time you hear the soft clink of coins, the next time change passes through your hands, remember this story. Remember that value is not always obvious. Remember that history often waits for those willing to look closer. Because sometimes, the most powerful discoveries aren't found by searching the world. They're found by finally seeing what's been with us all along.